Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I never imagined the hardest question of my life would be asked on one knee. I'd spent 6 months planning the proposal, rehearsing words in my head during late-night drives home from work, picturing the way Emma would smile before saying yes. We'd been together for 4 years, long enough that our lives overlapped in quiet, invisible ways. She kept a toothbrush at my place. I knew how she took her coffee. I knew when to give her space and when to pull her close. I thought that meant we were solid. The night I proposed, I chose a lake outside town, the one we used to visit on lazy Sundays. The water was still, the air warm, the sky streaked with orange and purple. I remember my hands shaking as I reached into my jacket pocket. Emma watched me, confused at first, then slowly realizing what was happening. When I opened the box, her expression didn't change the way I expected. There was no rush of joy, no laughter, no tears. Just silence. She didn't say no right away. She asked me to stand up. She held my hands and said she loved me, but her voice sounded careful, like she was choosing each word to avoid breaking something fragile. Then she said she wasn't ready, that she felt overwhelmed, that maybe we needed a break to figure things out. A break. The word echoed louder than the traffic on the road behind us. I nodded because that's what you do when your world tilts and you're trying not to fall over in public. The next few weeks were a blur of polite distance. We still texted, but the warmth was gone. Conversations felt like chores. She said the break would help her miss me. I told myself it was temporary, that love sometimes needed space to breathe. But space has a way of filling itself with doubt. I lay awake at night replaying every argument, every moment I might have missed a sign. I wondered if proposing had exposed a truth she'd been avoiding. After a month, something shifted inside me. Waiting started to feel less like loyalty and more like self-erasure. I realized I was putting my life on pause for someone who wasn't sure she wanted to be in it. That thought hurt more than the rejection itself. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I stopped waiting. I updated my dating profile for the first time in years. The photos felt foreign, like they belonged to a version of me I barely recognized. The first few conversations were awkward, but also strangely light. No history, no expectations, just curiosity. I went on a date with a woman named Laura, who laughed easily and asked thoughtful questions. We talked for hours without checking our phones. When I got home, I felt guilty for enjoying myself, and then confused about why I felt guilty at all. Word traveled faster than I expected. Emma called me one evening, her tone sharp, asking if the rumors were true. I told her yes, that I'd gone on a few dates. She went quiet, then accused me of moving on too fast, of not taking the break seriously. I reminded her that she'd asked for space, not exclusivity. The line went dead after that. Dating again didn't magically fix anything, but it changed how I saw myself. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't broken. I was a man who wanted commitment and clarity, and I was finally honest about that. Still, a part of me wondered if Emma would come back, if she'd realize what she'd almost lost. I didn't know then that the real shock wasn't her rejection, but in what would happen once she saw me no longer waiting where she'd left me. Those nights taught me how silence can be louder than arguments. I noticed how often I'd shape myself around her uncertainty, calling it patience, calling it love. Friends told me I was handling it well, but handling something isn't the same as healing. Every date, every conversation, every quiet drive home peeled back another layer of who I was without her approval. I didn't know where this path would lead, only that standing still had been slowly suffocating me, and moving forward, even blindly, finally felt like breathing again. I told myself whatever came next, clarity or heartbreak, would at least be honest, and honesty was something I refused to lose again this time. A few weeks into dating, I noticed a shift in the way I carried myself. The anxiety that had clung to my chest after Emma's rejection started to loosen. I laughed more freely, made plans without second-guessing, and even looked forward to weekends without that knot of anticipation. Laura became more than distraction. She was a reminder that connection could feel easy again. Simple, unforced, alive. Then came the night that changed everything. Emma showed up at my apartment unexpectedly. I just returned from dinner with Laura, my hands still carrying the warmth of her touch. I didn't answer immediately. My mind raced with questions. Had she been watching me? Had she been jealous? Or was it something else entirely? When I opened the door, there she was, standing in the hallway like a memory I thought I'd tucked away. She didn't smile. She didn't apologize. Her eyes, though, betrayed the hesitation and regret she refused to voice. "I saw you," she said quietly, almost too quiet, as if the words themselves were dangerous. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite her in. I just let her words hang between us. "You moved on." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a challenge, a confession all at once. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with a strange anticipatory clarity. I had already built my life beyond her uncertainty, and she was now confronting the consequences. "Yes," I replied simply. "I did." My voice was calm, firm. I wasn't defending myself. I wasn't justifying my actions. I was stating a fact. That simple acknowledgement seemed to rattle her more than any argument ever had. She fidgeted with her coat, her eyes darting, searching perhaps for some trace of the man she had known, maybe hoping I'd crumble. But I didn't. I wasn't the man she left hanging in indecision anymore. I thought you'd wait," she stammered, words tangled with a faint edge of desperation. I shook my head, a small, almost pitying gesture. I waited long enough. I waited for clarity that never came. I waited for someone to know what they wanted instead of testing my patience. Waiting isn't love. It's hope misused. Emma's silence filled the hallway, like a storm held back by tension. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in presence, as if all the power she held in that relationship had quietly slipped through her fingers. That was the most shocking part. I had expected anger, a fight, maybe tears, but this quiet collapse of certainty was far more revealing. The woman I had adored, the one I had imagined spending the rest of my life with, had been replaced by uncertainty and regret. Standing in my doorway, powerless to reclaim what she had let go. She tried again, then stopped. I could see the hesitation, the reality of what she'd done, the words she had chosen, the break she had asked for, finally weighed on her. I made a mistake," she whispered, and for a moment, I almost felt the old pull, the desire to reach for her, to reconcile. Almost. But that part of me had learned its lesson. I had tasted what freedom felt like, and realized that love forced from obligation was nothing but an empty echo. I stepped aside slightly, letting her step closer, but I didn't move forward. "Emma," I said, voice low, measured, "this isn't about mistakes anymore. This is about truth. You asked for space. You got it." I moved forward. "I found life outside the waiting room you left me in. That's not betrayal. It's survival." Her eyes glistened now, a shimmer of something I used to know, but it was different. Not joy, not love, not the fire that had drawn me to her. Regret, maybe, or realization. I didn't reach for her, though a part of me wanted to. I could have stepped back into the life we'd paused, but I recognized a trap. Stepping back would have meant sacrificing my clarity, my dignity, and my newfound self-respect. I didn't know it would hurt like this," she said finally, voice breaking slightly. And in that admission, I found the final closure I hadn't realized I needed. The woman I had loved was no longer the one I needed. The longing, the fear of rejection, the constant balancing of her uncertainty against my commitment, all of it ended in this quiet hallway, under dim light, with her words hanging like fragile glass. I nodded once, slowly. "I know." I didn't add anything else. Words would have been futile. Silence had more weight. I could feel it settling in both of us. The realization that life had moved in one direction, and we were now on opposite paths. She stepped back, turned, and left. No anger, no screaming, just the echo of a door closing and a chapter ending. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing in the calm. The strange thing was, I felt relief, not regret. The weeks of moving on, of learning to trust myself, of opening my heart again, every step had led me here. I had loved, lost, survived, and learned that sometimes rejection isn't a wall. It's a doorway to something better. Later that evening, I called Laura. I didn't need to explain what happened, but I wanted to share the simple truth of being alive again. She answered immediately, laughter in her voice, and for the first time in months, I felt fully present, fully seen, fully free. Emma was part of my past, and that was all she would ever be. Moving on wasn't betrayal. It was reclaiming my life. That night, I finally understood the power of letting go. The sting of rejection had been sharp, but it carved out space for clarity, self-respect, and a chance to love again, not as a shadow of someone else's indecision, but as the man I chose to be. Life had a strange way of teaching lessons, and sometimes heartbreak was the teacher we didn't know we needed.